Yes, and very much a necessary exploration into these fields. I would like to talk more, investigate together, more into the fear, the trepidation, the terror around the emptiness. Because in some world religions, it's not even recommended, it's not allowed, it's a banished or forbidden process, is to empty oneself out fully. And part of the fear that leads to such regulation is the fear that if you're emptied out to the bottom, then something else might come in. So there's both what you just mentioned, a fear of the nothingness, of being nothing without the makeup, and the pain of being so overexposed without protection. And then there also seems to be a fear of what you might be opening yourself up to that would be beyond your control, your programmed sense of control, at least. And this is something that interests me greatly. And I'd like to understand that fear more. Because from my own lived experience and my own research, and also being a Pancha Karma specialist, this is something that I focus on every year in my life and study through the year, is the Pancha Karma, which is the keystone of the Ayurvedic science, which is a cellular detoxification, a systematic process of detoxifying on a cellular level, organ by organ, system by system, a highly intelligent, ancient, timeless, and ever relevant system that is just, you know, I see what many people might call miracles through this process, Pancha Karma. And so I witness over and over again the necessity of dissolving and eliminating the blockages, the disintegration. Well, first of all, the exposure and the identification of blockage, of obscuration, both on subtle and gross levels, and the assisted process of the breakdown and the metabolism, increased metabolism of that toxicity. And then the assisted process of evacuation, which then allows the system to be more sensitized, to have more space, to have greater circulation from bottom to top. So I know firsthand what it is to purge, to empty, and how important that is prior to the process of building back up, of true protection, of a true nourishment that then will serve as insulation where it's needed. So I am very fascinated by this fear of the emptying, the fear of being left high and dry. And thank you for going there.
It's very interesting because the moment I touch this explanation of, let's say, we Westerners are afraid of being emptied out because, and then this explanation that I gave, the moment I enter that, or that I touch that, I almost touch immediately through that. So we have at the moment, let's say, two explanations. One coming from my side. No, I'm worth nothing. And then you will see that. And that's a very psychological / very cultural dependent explanation. and also, of course, trauma-induced. I think that's a trauma level of a culture, having that as a collective belief system. However, that is pretty close underneath the surface of the consciousness. If we go into this layer, we would sink deeper into exactly your explanation, the thing that might fill me up again. Because I think trauma at the end, always in westernized trauma research, and I think that is a difference to, for example, tantric or Buddhist knowledge about trauma as an initiation, as something that also might carry you into a more or less right direction. In westernized trauma therapy, it's always about polarity. The trauma is the confusion. It's the wrong direction. We don't go there. We go into the level, into the direction of healing. And I somehow see that this is a two-dimensional model, and a multi-dimensional model would speak better about the love and dance between trauma and healing, or trauma and wisdom, or trauma and spirituality, which is that I think trauma, it feels like I am deleted in the most horrific way, and still I am deleted is re-recognized within the trauma core as this is where I am beyond. To some extent, I think people relate to their trauma not only in trauma-induced ways, or not only because it's a horror that keeps calling me, but also because there is something within the horror that is essentially true and attracts us even more. It's maybe like a sugar addiction. I mean, because I'm addicted to sugar, I eat sugar because I'm addicted to that. And still the core is the sweetness, which would be the highway for me to feel protected enough in order to do the next step that truly nourishes and truly heals me. So to some extent, I'm wondering if I think that what I could introduce you to, or what I could describe more according to your question about the structure and material of the sphere, is also something that dissolves the fear as a kind of, it's a typical westernized mind explanation. But in the end, why am I afraid of being emptied out? Why are you afraid of being emptied out? Why is anybody in any other era, in any other culture, afraid of emptied out? There is an absolute essential initiative momentum which is underneath of every culture. So I think it's, we touch this way or the other way around. We touch something super absolute almost, or something initiating us from wherever we approach this moment of emptiness is empty. And I think Pancha Karma is a wonderful reflection and somatically visible process of proving to us that whatever is emptied out, to some extent, I do not know, and yeah, it might be come out completely wrong, but to some extent it didn't want to exist that way anyway. The body stays alive during a Pancha Karma, however the person might experience an absolute emptiness, and both exist somehow not only simultaneously but because of each other. And I think this beauty is something that draws us into emptiness. Why soever I say, Uma, I feel attracted to Pancha Karma, you know exactly why I'm attracted even more, and I know it subconsciously also. It's just on which level of consciousness do we use explanation, but also this, where do we start working in order to dissolve every layer that can be dissolved, of fear, of unnecessary suffering, basically. So I think finally I'm afraid of, if I let go of myself, if I'm emptied out, I will have to handle the unbearable beauty and richness of life, and also what I then will call being myself. And that is a point of no return, or something that you can't unsee. And I think the only fear that somehow sustainably can call to be the one that makes us withdraw from this complete emptiness is this. We know always what is more true than the things we call to be the truest. We always know that. So we always have to explain enough why. And in the end, it's all a game in myself. It's weird, as maybe, I do not know, but maybe something tantric around the somatic wires for something transcendental, or the embodied path or streams for something immortal. Maybe that could give words or describe. I'm not afraid of the richness and beauty that I am or that life is. But there is like a fear of the transition part is the problem. So that is why I feel drawn to talk about Tantra at the moment, because it's like the energy movement, the amount of shift before time and space, energy moving, but not within time and space. I think this kind of transformation or transmutation phase is something that feels like the shock, or something that might tear me into pieces. And I mean, but also will only happen when I'm torn into pieces. So yeah, but this is my kind of trying to explain why I can't answer. Yeah.